Right, I'll give you a shout in a second. Okay, Alex, and you are live.
Good afternoon and welcome to Power BI Lunch and Learn. My name's Alex Taylor. Today you are joining us for episode 5 of DAX Variables and Edit Interactions. We've got talks from Lewis Holmes and Ben Howard. And let me just quickly go through our slides today. So Lewis will be talking through the X formulas and variables to use calculate, filter and variables. And Ben will be talking through edit interactions, so editing interactions and removing all critical data points on a chart. Next slide. Firstly, thank you to everyone who's attended the first 4 episodes we've had so far.
Apologies, we are having some technical issues around Alex's end. Alex,
apologies, guys. Yeah, we sorted. Sorry, I'm just trying to childmind and today on my day off. Sorry about that. So yes, about Power BI Youth Group, we've been going for over 3.5 years. We've got over 2,000 members, 5,000 followers, well actually 6,000 followers on LinkedIn, and we meet up face to face. I said I know a lot of people who attend the first 4 or 5 sessions will have seen that about the youth group. We have got a session next Thursday, so I will be sharing details about this next Wednesday session for our quiz. So it's Power BI Youth Group is a fun, interactive session. We have speakers attended alike from all over the world, we will be sharing our slides after today's session in the shared drive. I said, in terms of reviews, obviously we've got some great reviews, and we're averaging about 4.6 out of 5, which is not bad for an Uber. About myself, I'm a data analytics recruiter with over 16 years experience, long in the tooth. I'm passionate about data, and I've been running events for over 6 years since I've been at Robert Walters. So if you are looking for a new job, looking to recruit, please do get in touch. My details are below, and I'm happy to advise you on marketing conditions, onboarding candidates remotely, and any questions you have. Also salary surveys, I can give you rate guidelines, etc., etc. So today's session we'll have Lewis on first of all in about a couple of minutes, then Ben at 1 o'clock, and then we'll wrap up. Please do add your questions to the chat box. They'll be on the right-hand side, so do add them there, and we will do our best and endeavour to answer those questions. So either myself or Chev will answer the questions, or we'll put them out to Lewis and Ben when they have a free moment. So about Lewis, Lewis is a BI architect, contractor with over 10 years experience, specialising in the Microsoft stack. He's passionate about Power BI. He's been doing it for the last 3 years. Ben Howard is an MVP Microsoft project trainer. He's been doing it for the last 6 years, also the last 25 years. He's been specialising in Power BI for the last 6 years, and I know him very, very well. And finally, our producer today is Sheb Raymond. Sheb has been specialising in Power BI for the last 6 years. He is a Power BI architect. He's an expert. What I'll do is I'll be sending through details about this shortly, but Sheb is an architect, and he'll be sending through all the details that you need. Finally, episode 6, we will be kicking off this time next week with a quiz, 20 questions and prize giving. And episode 1 will feature Sheb Raymond as a quizmaster, and then Ben will be doing a randomizer in Power BI to select the winner. Some fantastic prizes, which Sheb will go into a bit more detail about shortly. But without further ado, we're going to kick off with Lewis Holmes. Cheers, guys.
Thank you very much, Alex. Hi, everyone. Just before we go over to Lewis, I just wanted to, first of all, just thank you all for joining these calls. I hope you're all well. Thanks for sharing, commenting, and liking all our sort of content that we go through. It really does sort of help us spur us on for future sessions as well. So if you can continue to do that, that'd be really appreciated. Really keep sharing these contents, keep sharing our posts, and let's keep getting everyone involved. So I'm going to share a link with you guys. So I want to get some feedback from these sessions. So the first thing I'm going to do as soon as I get off, send this over to Lewis, is post a link to a feedback form. Now this just goes through a few bits and pieces on sessions, a little bit about yourselves, and then on future sessions as well. So we started this to give you guys hints and tips and a view of sort of our experiences with real life businesses in our sort of time in industry. And as you know, there's every sort of company is different, and even the same company in different locations can have different metrics and different information. So that's the one thing that we do understand, and we do understand that you guys have your own challenges and your own problems at work as well in terms of Power BI and trying to get the right solution. So this is your opportunity to give us some feedback on that and what you want to sort of hear perhaps in future sessions. So give us that feedback. It takes about 2-3 minutes. I think we've sent a few out to a few different people, and the average time is around 2-3 minutes to complete those. So it really would help us sort of for future sessions as well. So if you could do that, that'd be fantastic. So the other thing that I wanted to just cover was, yes, as Alex has mentioned, there's a quiz next week, so please join in for that. We're really excited about that. So we'll be going through live 20 questions. We'll have a form similar to the one that I'm just going to send out in a minute. We're going to have the live answers at the end of the session as well, so there's no sort of waiting around, and there'll be a prize giving as well. Okay, so that's it from me. I'm going to pass over to Lewis now, who's going to go over through some awesome DAX measures on how to create and use some of those and how they can be used within your organization. So Lewis, if you can share your screen, I can send you live.
I think I am. Got it.
Thank you very much. And you are on screen.
Thank you, Chef, and thank you everyone for joining the session today. It's a sunny day in the northwest, so yes, thank you for joining us. And my name is Lewis Holmes, as Alex says, and I'm a business intelligence consultant. I work predominantly in the Microsoft stack and have been doing so for about 10 years and using Power BI for the past 4 or 5 years. Today I've got a 20-minute session to go over some DAX measures, so we're going to start off with something quite simple aggregations, but then we're going to look at the differences between things like sum and sum X. Then we're going to look at calculate, filters, and then variables. So to do that, I just need to get some nice data inside Power BI, and I have created some sample data inside a SQL server. So if I just load that in. I'm not doing any Power Query today, so I'm just going to load the data straight in with import mode. Okay, and if I just jump onto the data view to give you a quick overview of what's in the table. So this table is called order line, and it represents lines of orders that have come through an imaginary online shop. So the data consists of an order ID, and if I sort that ascending, an order ID and then a line for that particular order. So you see order number 1 has 4 lines, then we've got an imaginary product ID that's associated with that, the date of the order, the channel of the orders come through, be it app or website, and then we've got the number, the quantity they've ordered of a given product. So in this example, they've ordered 1 or product number 41, and the unit cost of that product. So there are 10,000 rows in this table, and I think there's about 8,000 different orders. An order can have more than 1 line. That's the important bit. Okay, so if we jump back onto the report view, we're going to create some measures. So as I did last week, for those who saw it, I like creating measures in their own little table. So I'm just going to quickly click on Enter Data, create a table called Metrics. That just creates a nice area for me to put them. The first one I'm going to create is just a simple count of the table, so we know how many order lines there are. So you can right click on Metrics, do a new measure. I'm going to call this one Order Lines, and this is a simple count of the order table. When I'm doing counts of tables, I tend to like picking the primary keys. If you have a nice structured data warehouse behind the scenes, you can kind of rely on those, can't you, to be accurate. So order lines, I'll create that. And now we have one measure against this metrics table. We can remove the column that had to be there in the first place. So you can see what's going on as we do this. I'm just going to show these measures in a table like this, and then get rid of this hierarchy. We don't need that. And then I'll do it by date descending. So we can see by day we've got 140 odd different order lines, but we might want to know how many actual orders that relates to. Remember, an order can have more than one line. So the formula we can use for that is a distinct count. So we'll do orders is the distinct count, and this time we are going to pick the order ID. It's that simple. We'll create that measure, show this on the table, and then we can just move this down slightly so you can see it. So yes, so now we can see we do have 10,000 lines, order lines, but that represents only 5,707 different orders. So far so good. And similarly, I'm going to create another measure for the number of unique products. So we'll do a distinct count of the product ID. So there are only 50 different products for this web store, but on a given day, they're selling in the high 40s number of different products. So that's showing most of their inventory is being sold every day. So that's good. The next one is revenue. I was going to create revenue. So this isn't as simple as doing a sum, because what we need to do is multiply the unit cost by the quantity. So this is where we start using the more complex functions. So again, we're going to create a new measure, call it revenue. But this time we're going to use a SUMX function. So the difference between sum and SUMX is it allows you to write an expression, and it allows you to specify the table you're summing. So we only have one table. We're going to sum the order line table, but instead of just naming one column as you can do in the sum, in SUMX you can reference multiple columns. So we are going to reference quantity times unit cost. So the X functions, SUMX, COUNTX, they evaluate on every single line of the table that's referenced. So this is the order line table. So on every line, it will go through and it will calculate this, and then it will give you the sum across the whole table or across the context you've selected in the report. So when we create this measure now, we can bring it into our table, and now we have a nice metric that's showing us revenue per day. That wouldn't be possible with the normal sum column. You would have to use SUMX to do this expression here. Now, the revenue metric is something that's quite prominent in businesses I've worked across, and then they always want to know revenue broken down by different sort of streams. So as I showed you at the start, there is a channel property against all the data. So it won't be uncommon to be asked what is the revenue just for the web or just for the app. So the way we can do that is by using the calculate function. We can call this app revenue, and we are going to use the calculate function, and it allows you to filter a expression or a measure. So you can put a measure in here, but then you can apply a filter on it straight away. So the filter could be channel equals web. And that's fairly simple, isn't it? So we are calculating the revenue metric, but we're applying a filter to the table saying we just want to know the web revenue. And it's not worked because I did web and not app. There we go. So this is the revenue from the app. And I think similarly, I'll create one for the website. So again, we're just doing exactly the same, calculate the revenue, but this time we're interested in the channel being website. And bringing this onto the report like this gives us the two measures, and you can see that app revenue plus web revenue does equal this overall revenue. Now I'm going to show you a peculiarity of using calculate. So in a separate table, I'm going to bring in the channel and then show you the app and web revenue. So you can see here, even though the measure is called app revenue and it is filtering the table for channel being app, against the website, it's showing the number, which you'd probably expect to be 0. And vice versa, on the web, it's showing the revenue against the app. When you do a filter using Calculate, you can either do it like this and put the filter straight in the Calculate function itself, or you can reference the filter function. So if I just change this to say filter, and then we're going to filter again the order line table, or we give it the exact same expression. We're going to say filter it where channel is app. And now if you save that measure, you see it disappears. So it's worth knowing the difference between the two types of filtering. If you use this method with the filter, it will keep the other filter context in place. So there is an implicit filter in this cell where it says the channel is website. So it's saying, okay, I'm going to calculate the revenue where the channel is website and also where the channel is app, which obviously will lead to 0. In the other version, where we filter it in this manner, this overrides any filter you have on the field you're referencing. So in this manner, on the web revenue metric, even though it's saying app here, it's ignoring this filter and it's just applying this filter saying website. So that's why you're getting the value the same in both fields. If you filter in this manner as well, you can only reference one column. If you're doing something more complex, then you do need to use the filter function here and apply your logic across multiple columns in the filter function. So I'm just going to change the web one so it operates in the same way. Filter the order line by website. And a tip I can give you where you see instances like this, where it's not returned any results because the user's filtered down to such a way where there aren't any rows. That it doesn't always look the neatest. So what I tend to do is just do +0 at the end of the equation, and it pops a 0 value in there. That just tidies it up nicely, doesn't it? Very good. So that gives you a quick overview of the calculate function and how it interacts with the filter function. Another measure I'm asked to calculate fairly often is the average transaction value for an order. So you may think that's fairly simple. You can take an average of you get the revenue divided by the order. However, what we first need to do is calculate the total revenue per order at order level. So this table, remember, contains many lines. If you just calculated the revenue and averaged it, you'll just get the revenue per order line, not per order. So we need to create a slightly more complicated measure in DAX. So to highlight what I'm doing, I'm going to create a DAX table briefly. So under the modeling tab, you have the option to do a new table. And if you select that, it will allow you to write a DAX table. So I'm just going to call this orders. So this is going to be a table that's at the level of an order. And there's a really handy function in DAX called summarize. Summarize works exactly as the group by function does in SQL Server, if you're familiar with that. You give it the columns you want to retain, and then you aggregate the other ones. So you could think of it as a pivot as well, if you've done that in Excel. So we are going to summarize the order line table, but we're going to summarize it at the level of order ID. And then we want to aggregate the revenue column. So we're going to call it order revenue. And the expression we're going to use, we could write quantity times unit cost here, but we do already have the revenue measure. So we'll just bring that one in. So now we have a new table that's present, and so it's a DAX table. You can see it in the relationships, the order level table, and you can see the data that's inside it. So if I click on it here, we can see it's a very simple table. It's only got a line per order, so 5,707, and it's giving you the total revenue per order. So now you understand what this summarize function is doing. I'm going to use it inside a measure to calculate the average transaction value, because what we do want to show is the average of this column, don't we? The order revenue column. So I'll jump back onto the report view, and I'll just create a new metric. I'm going to do ATV, shorthand for average transaction value. And I'm going to just create a new line. Don't be scared of using lines in DAX. It helps make code clearer, especially if using variables. So we are going to create a variable now, and we're going to call it order level table, just to be extra clear what we're doing. And we're going to give it that. Oh, I thought I copied it, so I'll write it again. We're going to summarize the order line table, bring in order ID. We're going to calculate order revenue. And that is just the revenue column. So this variable now contains the data you just saw in that table I showed you. But in DAX, whenever you start using variables and things like this, you always need to tell it what value you're going to return. So we can just do, we're going to return a value, and we're going to use average. And we have to use average X here, because average X allows you to choose the table you're referencing. And a handy feature of the X columns is it doesn't have to be a table that's in the data model, it can be a variable table. So we can actually tell it to average that order level table. And it wants to know what column we're going to average, and we're going to average the order revenue. And that's it. So now we can save that, bring it into the table, and we can see the average transaction value on a given day. And I think we have a question, Chev?
Nope, we handle the questions, that's fine.
Okay, sorry, I thought I saw something, that's fine. So these are the measures I was going to create against this model, and you can see how the variables in the average transaction value are powerful. This does have an overhead creating a variable. Obviously, it has to calculate this table on the fly, but it's one way of getting to the correct answer, and I believe it's one of the better ways. I have a couple of examples now to show you around concatenation of text fields. And to do that, I'm going to jump into my example I did last week. So for those of you who attended the session last week, this dashboard will be familiar. This is from the Internet Movie Database. It lists all the movies from 1950, their average ratings, and we can search by actor, and it shows the movie and the ratings and how many votes it's had. What I was thinking is it'd be nice to be able to show the movie names on this chart. So if you select an actor such as Robert De Niro, choose his full name, we can see his number of movies he has there. But it'd be nice to see the movie names themselves, wouldn't it? So the way you achieve that is by using the Concatenate X function. So I'm just going to create a new measure. Say movie names. And Concatenate X. If you use the normal concatenate, it's just about joining two strings together. But if you're doing a measure over a table, you need to use Concatenate X. And this is going to be the title, or I call it title, but it's really the movie table. And the field we want to join together is, again, title of the movie. And it allows you to give a delimiter, which is the thing that separates it. So we're just going to do comma and a space, so it looks nice. And you can even give it the order by, so I think that's useful. We'll have it do the rating, the average rating descending, so that the movies with the highest ratings appear first. Okay, so I'll bring that in now, and then we can include it as a tooltip on this chart. Where's it gone? It has gone as a tooltip. So now when you hover over this, you can see a comma separated list of the movies that we're interested in. Now this highlights one of the issues with doing concatenate. If you have lots of values, it doesn't stop. It just carries on, and it gives you lots and lots of data, and it can mess up the report. And then particularly if you include it in a table, you can end up with stuff like this, which is obviously not usable. So what I tend to do is limit the amount of values it concatenates together. So the way I'll do that is, again, by just using a quick variable. So we're going to say a variable, and I'm going to just have it do the top 10. And there's a handy function again in DAX called top n, and it allows you to filter a table by the top X number of values. So we're going to say we're going to bring the top 10 from the movie table, which is called title, and then which 10 do we want? Well, we're going to bring in the ones with the highest rating. So this variable now contains a table which just has 10 rows, and it's the top 10 movies. So now instead of referencing the full table here, we can just reference this variable and tell it to return the results of that. Save it, and now it looks much better. It's brought in all the actors that we had before, but it's limited it to the top 10 movies, and then where there's no context, it's just got the top 10 movies of all time. If you are doing a Concatenate X, I would recommend you do something along those lines, just to prevent somehow it exposing lots and lots of different values. And if you've got things that are overlapping, you can use the or say it's a product and you've got potentially the same product name, you could have it do a distinct list of products. That does more or less cover off my talk for today, but how's the Q&A been going, Shep?
Hi, Lewis. Thanks for that. Yes, Q&A is going well. Okay, so we've got a question here. So it says, is it possible to apply the average function on time, i.e. where we have a list of tasks of various categories with the time to complete? Is it possible to do a calculation on average time to complete?
So without seeing how the data is structured, it's a bit difficult. But if you have a table that describes tasks and you've got a time field in there, you can average a time field, can't you? Pretty sure you can.
Yeah.
And that'll give you the average time to complete. And then any other filtering you do, such as by the person it's assigned to or by the date it was assigned, that would also apply. Or you might want to use the filter function to remove the date filtering, so you can just see over the entire period how long, what's the average duration.
That's right, yeah. And I think also there's I think they've updated the date diff function as well to include hour and minutes in there also, so you could apply a date diff to those date values, compare it to the current day or whichever day you wanted to, and get the minute difference as a new column, and then apply the same DAX measures that Lewis has applied here in terms of average and sums, and get the average from there as well.
Indeed, yeah.
Excellent. Another one, is it necessary to type return when you use variables?
I think it is. I always have done.
Yeah, I think that's right. You have to return a value from a variable when you do that. Okay, you will get an error, I think, otherwise, because if you're using variables within a DAX function and then not returning anything, there's no point of having the variables there in the first place. Okay, that's it for the questions. Thanks for that, Lewis. We're going to switch over to Ben now. So Ben, if you can share your screen, that'd be fantastic. Okay, and you should be live now.
Brilliant. So I think my mic is unmuted. Welcome, everybody.
Ben, are you there?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, I know. Just playing with you. Carry on.
Just playing with me. Oh, weird bloke, weird bloke. So my mic is unmuted. I echo everybody's thanks for attending, and what a lovely day it is. So what I wanted to do was take you through just some thoughts around editing interactions and how you make your reports really friendly for the end user. Okay, so we know that Power BI is massively interactive. Sometimes you don't necessarily want that. So what is the issue? Well, this was a real customer issue, and ultimately the customer just wanted the image. Okay, they didn't want the interactions on the screen, or they wanted minimal interactions. Okay, so the whole point of being able to click on a data point was too much for this particular customer. And the result is that you always need to think about, the end user experience. If you have a bad report, a report that's difficult to use, if people don't have the training around Power BI to reset filters or whatever, then these things just aren't used. So that was kind of the issue. And I thought about this for a while because it goes against kind of what Power BI should be doing. But ultimately our customers are always right, and of course there is a solution. So in terms of what's in our toolbox for providing a solution like this, well, obviously we've got this whole edit interactions between visuals, which kind of goes so far but not necessarily far enough. We'd certainly want to look at that. We definitely want to turn off visual headers. So again, I'm thinking about reports going out to the web. I'm looking at people using those on mobile phones and iPads, etc. And visual headers just needs to be kind of turned off. We need to begin to think about how we layer or order our visuals and whether visuals are transparent or not. Okay, because sometimes you've got blank areas on screens, or you've got white areas on screens, and you can utilize that area. Okay, again, you can utilize it to present information to your users. So it's important to get into that a little bit. Power BI is okay. It's not quite as good as PowerPoint. Anybody who's built a complex PowerPoint deck will understand all about layers, etc. And of course, one of the things I kind of like to do on the tip around here is kind of protect those visuals that you want to remove the interactivity from by kind of putting what I think of as perspex or a glass screen on top of them. In this case, I've called it a transparent seal. That is a seal on the right hand side, left hand side, but it's not transparent, of course. All right, so let's go and have a look at what we've got. So here's a Power BI report, which it's mine. So I'm aware it refreshes every day. Now, this is the example we're going to use. This has obviously got lots of visuals on there and all of the interactivity. So, for example, here's a table, and if we click on England, then
sorry to interrupt, Ben. I think you've just got an image of me just at the bottom there. Just want to minimize that.
That's a bit scary. I have got that.
It is scary. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Wow.
Carry on.
I've lost my thread now.
Sorry.
Yeah. So obviously you've got the interactivity. So if we select, then the visualizations change, which is all well and good. We can also, we've given the user the ability to order in a different way, and of course they could click on focus mode, or they could even spotlight if we've just got spotlight switched on. So that interactivity, it's kind of great. We all think it's great, but it isn't necessarily great for everybody. What my customer wanted was effectively just to provide 4 buttons, and here we've got the 4 buttons that they wanted for the interactivity, and it's these buttons which should then update this chart here and this chart here effectively, and this one. So if I just select England out of the 4 nations, then the total deaths should reflect England, and the 14-day moving average should reflect England, and this chart should update, but this table doesn't need to update. Okay, and so that's kind of where we are. So how do we do that? Well, let me take you through that. If we have a look on the Format tab and we select a visual, okay, and again, this is, you have to be quite careful when you're selecting visuals. So how do you know which visual you've got selected here? Well, if you click on the View tab, then you've got the selection pane, okay, and in this selection pane, you'll see all of your visuals. Now, each visual has a name, and you can also begin to group visuals. So I tend to group visuals by their functional area or where they sit on the screen. So this one's basically very simple. I've got a grouping called top right, and I've got one called graph and data, and I've got one called top left. And it also allows you to kind of hide everything at once as well. So if I wanted to hide everything in the top right, I just click on there, and then all of the visuals in the top right are hidden. Okay, so this visual that we want to play with here, if I click on it, I can either select it and I can see what I've renamed it, because initially this would just be called Chiclet Visual or whatever. So you can always rename your visuals, and I would thoroughly encourage you to rename your visuals so you know what you're dealing with. So I've got that Chiclet Flags visual selected, and with that selected, then of course, you know, I suspect you all know this anyway. From there, with it selected, he says, chiclet flags. Then we can click on the format and we can edit the interaction between that visual and the other visuals. So again, you need to be fairly careful with this. So if I'm going to click on the chiclet flag, I don't want this table to change, so we won't change that. The last reporting date won't change anyway, simply because I know the data. The moving average we will have to change, and this field, which just this card, which multi-line card just puts in key dates for me, that won't change. But notice I can't get at that at the moment, and the reason I can't get at that is because this visual is below, so this little card visual here is actually below or underneath this large visual. So again, you need to understand what the kind of layering is of the objects, whether they're in front or behind different objects. So you need to be quite careful about that. Similarly for this visual, if I was to allow clicking on this visual, then what other visuals would I edit or interact with? However, given this is the only visual we're going to edit or interact with, I don't need to worry too much about everything else. But I do want to display this by a sort order of number of deaths. So that's the first thing. We kind of get this set up. And then we go through and we turn off all these lovely interaction buttons. So let me just select area and depth. So this is a good way of doing this, just by clicking on the selection here. Then of course you can pick up the formatting and just turn the visual header off for that card, for that item. We can do the same for card depths, the card reporting one. It's all a bit dull and you never get it right first time, but we'll do that. We'll do the 14-day moving average. We'll do the chiclet flags. We'll get rid of the visual header on that. The text, which says click on the flags, for container, which is just the piece around it, and the title, which says COVID-19 deaths. We can get rid of all of those. So pretty much, oh, and the footer, of course, right at the bottom here. You should always say where you get your data from. And so the interactions are turned off. Now, it doesn't look like that when we're in the report editing it. So I really need to publish this. So let's just go and publish that report and just have a look at those. Make sure those interactions are kind of turned off. Oh, come on. So we'll publish that up to Power BI Lunch and Learn. We've already got that report there. Fair enough. And we've got that, and we should be able to open this up. So if I refresh this now, then we should be part way to our solution. And that part way mainly is our interactions. Okay, so this should still work as we thought it should do. That's okay. We're not changing this interaction, so that table stays the same. And in terms of visual headers, as I mouse over things, I'm not really getting any visual headers popping up, so quite happy about that. But I've still got some interactivity, right? I can still click on this data point and say, whoa, that's England, and there were 1,100 deaths that day. Or this little data point here is Scotland, and there's 5. And that's what, you know, I want to have the ability to remove, because we don't want the interactivity on this page, and we don't want the interactivity here either, or rather on this portion of the visual. So again, how do we do that? Well, let's go back to our Power BI report. I'm just going to duplicate this page because that's how I do all of my testing and setting up. We'll just call this no interactivity. And this is where we come and we look for that kind of Perspex screen. Okay, so what is a Perspex screen as far as Power BI is concerned? Well, we can put a text box on there or some other blank visual. I tend to choose, I've got a couple of things that I'll do. I'll either choose an image. Now if I just open up Snagit editor, which is one of the tools I use all the time, here's an image I've got, and that's just a square rectangle with a blank fill. Okay, so that's all it is. See-through fill, square rectangle. So we could use that one as our as an image. If you've got Snagit or some other tool to do this, to create images, etc., then that's a good tool to use. Alternatively, though, we could just use a text box. So let's go and insert a text box, and here's the text box. The first thing I do for this is I change the background color so I can see where that text box is being placed. So that's dark blue. So I'm going to bring that to the front of everything that I want to cover. Okay, now I can't obviously cover this area because I want to click in this area. So everything I want to protect. So that's fine. The reason I don't use a rectangle shape is that you've always got a strange line around the side of the rectangle. So a text box is typically better. We can change this color to be white. You can't have a see-through text box. You can't have a see-through color, but you can change the transparency. And so we can say that's 100% transparent. Okay, now it's come in as a text box, so I'm going to rename that, and I'm going to call that bottom glass. Okay, and in terms of where it sits with the graph and the data, so I know where it is. We're going to do the same again, but this time let's just turn the background on, turn it to be a nice blue again. This time we're going to throw that over to here, move that over, and again, I don't need to, but it makes sense just to do that. And then that's my text box. So we'll change the background color to be white. We'll stick 100% transparency on there, and we'll call that glass, and we'll move that to the top right. Okay, so that should be okay. Now you can see again in my Power BI report as I go in, then it's kind of waiting for me to type some text in here. We obviously want to make sure we haven't typed any in, and typically I would use the blank image instead. Now the other thing to say about this, of course, is remember to turn the visual headers off for your perspex or your glass items. Okay, the other thing that you want to make sure is that those two, and they should have by default, but as soon as you start messing around with this stuff, is that the glass items should be, let's just have a look at the format, right at the front. So you can't actually see, unlike nice tools such as some of the Adobe design tools and other tools, you can see exactly kind of the layer that the visualization is on. You can't with either PowerPoint, I don't think, or Power BI. And so for something like this, I just kind of say bring it to the front. Okay, so that I know that it's sitting on top. So we've done that with the upper glass. Let's do that with the bottom glass. So make sure that's selected. Again, on view, bottom glass. Bring that to the front. Okay, so that should kind of be okay. Let's just, I'll uncheck edit interactions because we no longer need that. Home, we'll publish this up. And now, once we publish that, do you want to save this? Yes. And do you want to overwrite this? Yes. Power BI Lunch and Learn, select. Once that's done, we should have two tabs, one with UK Nations Daily and one labeled non-interactivity. Drum roll. Da, 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 da. There we go. Okay, so UK Nations Daily will know how that works once that refreshes. Non-interactivity, let's just go and have a look at that. So what do I always check, you know, what does work. So let's just go and have a look at let's say Northern Ireland, and we should be changing then this table, which we are. So that works quite nicely. The table works. UK moving 14-day moving average works. Total deaths for Northern Ireland also works. So those measures are working well. This table doesn't change though. Okay, so that's useful because, you know, I never wanted that to change. So we can go and select everything else, and everything else will work. I can't click in this area though. So for this table, if you can hear my mouse, it's clicking wildly. There's no interactivity on that because, of course, we are now clicking on my glass perspex screen. In fact, you can just see it here. So I would need just to do some tidying up around this area. Similarly, in the daily deaths and 14-day moving average, there's a whole glass screen on top of that. So I can't select any of these data points. So the only thing I am able to select, of course, is this. Okay, now this is kind of useful if you never ever provide any training to people, which of course you should. Okay, so let's just see what this looks like on my phone. So I'm going to press the button here which says Power BI on my phone. Okay, that opens up Power BI. We should have a in fact, what's going to be easier if I come out of here and I just favorite this. So if we come back into here and we'll just put mark that as a favorite so that that appears in our favorite here. So we've got lunch and learn interactions, and we go back into here and we just refresh for favorites. There we go, lunch and learn interactions. So I'll click on there. Now I haven't created, I think actually I might have created a mobile phone report for one of these. Let's just have a look. But the point is, on a mobile phone, lots of people will go, oh, Power BI, cool application, but they'll never read the instructions, right? So we'll just wait for this to load up over my Wi-Fi. They never read the instructions, so often they don't realize there's a reset button. And of course, on a phone, you've got these, if you're like me, you've got these big fat fingers, and it's difficult to, you know, you might be trying to scroll up or down and you might accidentally select an interactive point on a page. So that's what that's another reason for doing this. I'm only going to give this another 30 seconds or so. If it doesn't come back, we will go and have a look at something else. In fact, let's go and have a look at something else. That will come back. The last thing you can do, this is one that I pre-built, of course. Now, if you remember last week's session, or the week before, I can't remember, I talked about adding some buttons and interactivity on the screen. And so UK Nations Daily is what you've already seen. Blue Peter was obviously the one I've just done, one I've produced before. The slider one just hides, just puts a couple of bookmarks on the screen, which toggle the views on or off, the previous two views, if you like. So if we're able to select view and we have a look at bookmarks, then I've got two bookmarks, one with interactivity and one without interactivity. And of course, this toggle interactivity just switches between the two different views. So that one has got interactivity, so I can click here, etc. Or more importantly, perhaps I can click, let that go. My laptop's going massively slowly. Or more importantly, perhaps I can click on the map, the graph, to select a specific data point. Okay, or of course we can come back and we can say, let's turn the interactivity off. So you can make this as smart or as not smart as you want, really. Okay, let's come back to here. No, that's not worked. All right. We won't bother toggling that one. Okay, so that was it really. Just as a recap, what I did do ultimately, there's a few things to take out of this. One is, get to know that edit interactions button, because that's going to be a key button for you in terms of editing interactions between this visual and any other visuals. Think about where your visuals are layered. So for example, these two visuals sit behind this large graph here, but this large graph is 100% transparent. So that's okay. Soon, of course, this visual, this 405, this 14-day moving average, will have to move down here as this graph moves over. So get to understand the layering of your visuals. Remember to turn off the visual headers, because again, from an end user perspective, they can cause confusion. It's definitely worth grouping and renaming your visuals so that they sit in the right area. And then finally, of course, the trick here was to use the kind of bit of upper glass in that case, or for this one, if we get rid of the bookmarks and we turn the selection on, I think for this one, the glass was, it's not displayed because we've got the interactivity. Let's do the Blue Peter one. Top glass was, we can't see it. Yeah, yeah, it was just an image. Okay, so it wasn't a text box, and perhaps an image is better. You can see it here actually. So that was just my blank image which I'd brought through from Snagit. Okay, so that's me pretty much done on that one. Chev, do we have any questions for that?
Thank you, Ben. Yes, very insightful and interesting. We have a few questions actually. Yes, so I'll put those to you now. So, question about the edit interactions: will they work across multiple pages? So editing the interactions.
No,
I don't think they will. But
no, it's purely for that visual on that page. There you go.
Okay. How do you make it clear which button the slice has been selected? So I'm assuming this means when you're selecting your levels, yeah, in your pane. So how can you make it clear which one's being selected?
Well, you could do a couple of things, couldn't you? You could have a little bit of text which says interactivity switched on and then switched off, yeah. Or you could have a heading up here which just says interactivity, and then below the button on or off, and again you just display or not those particular pieces of text. I'm sure our friend Lewis, of course, could work out some automatic DAX measure for it.
potentially. The other thing you can do is to give it a little border, so when you do select it, you can sort of see that border around wherever that's appearing, and remove that when you're ready to publish. That's another way to do that. So there's a question about you covered the card visuals as well. So, but there's no interaction with those. So what was the reason you covered those, or was that just
well, yeah, if you click on a card visual, you're never going to get an interaction either, and so that was it. So if I said we would edit the interactions from a card visual to something else, then let's just delete that bit out of the recording, because plainly when you click on a card visual, there's no interactions to any of the other visuals.
I thought so, yeah. I guess it's a way you can limit that as well, and if you do have the header options, that will remove that from there as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so something about the rolling average. So how was it that you did the rolling average on there?
Well, I'd have to, let's go and have a look.
Is it another session, or can we have a quick look at that?
It's a measure. What do I call it? 14-day moving average. It's just a DAX measure, which is that. So for this particular model, we've got a date table, which obviously is linked then into the daily change. Sorry, one of these values, probably, I can't remember, but with this data we get a reporting date, and then very simply, you can go and Google your how to create a 14-day rolling average, and that was it. And
there's also the quick measures as well.
Quick measure as well, isn't there? Yes.
Use as a rolling average. So if you go into the quick measures, there is an option for a rolling average there, and you simply drag in your measure, your date field, and the number of points I think that you want to include on there, and you can simply create that, and that will create you an average value there as well. That was
and in fact, in truth, that's probably exactly what I did. I've slept since then, so I can't remember. But I did have another one of these reports because this data is just from a visual end user experience. This data is very up and down. When I looked at this and put it on a 2-week period, so I graphed the data by week rather than by day, and then I had a 2-week moving average, and you could really see this trend line coming down very nicely, and you could see the week on week trend line for all of the nations coming down very nicely as well. So what was interesting very early on when we did this was we only had maybe 2 weeks worth of data, so we were looking at 14 bits of data. Now we're into this for 8, 10, 12 weeks, whatever we're into, more than that. Sometimes you want to see the detailed data, and sometimes you want to see this kind of more consolidated data. So again, for me, it's all about the end user experience. Is this report useful for somebody? Are they going to use it? Are we taking data and turning it into information? So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ben. Appreciate that. Thanks for your presentation. I'm just going to see if Alex is back. Alex, are you back? I think you had some trouble earlier.
Yes, my 3-year-old decided to pop the volume up on his iPad just as we went live. So apologies for the background noise at the start of the session. Thank you very much to Lewis and Ben for the talks today. They were fantastic. Really enjoyed them. They were really good sessions. We will be back this time next week with our season finale with our live quiz. So do get involved. The prize is on offer. We're going to have Power BI books, Power BI t-shirts, and a few other things. So you need to be live and taking part in the quiz to be in the pot for winning prizes. But thank you very much to Lewis for his DAX talk, for Ben for his interaction talk, and also to Sheb for monitoring the quiz and producing as always. Do you have any final words to say, Sheb, before we wrap up today?
Yes, just the last thing on the feedback forms. If you guys can just take a few minutes to fill out those forms, that would be really appreciated. Each entry, each time you fill out a form, it is an entry in our prize draw for the randomizer next week as well. So please share that, send us your thoughts, and hopefully we'll see you at the quiz next week.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.